Okay, we're recording. All right. Hey, Will. Good to see
Hey,
you.
likewise,
Yeah.
likewise.
Thanks for
Look,
being here.
yeah, I'm glad to be here. I've been looking forward to it for since you started. I'm glad I was able to finally fit it in my schedule this time.
Nice, nice. I'm glad you were able to. I'm excited to talk with you today. And thank you, everyone, for being here and for watching today and listening. So, Will, if you could share with us a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are today, and what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to touch on your journey to healing your any chronic issues that you had health wise. Correct?
Yes. Well, first of all, I was born and raised on the
Okay.
East Coast. I'm originally from Philadelphia, PA, and I'll say that you know it. I'll say my childhood and everything like that started out is fairly normal in a lot of ways, but then as time goes on, uh, I'll use the word. All right. Yeah, born and raised in Philadelphia, PA, and lived there all my life until I moved here to Portland, Oregon area 4 years ago. So I would say I started out with a fairly normal childhood in a lot of ways, but then as time goes on, I look back, I found out it was actually more dysfunctional, than I thought. And you know, uh, in order to get to the meat of the health and healing lifestyle, I'll just say that I would say I was like the unpopular, like nerdy kid archetype type thing, and so that was one of my dysfunctions there. Suffered a lot of bullying and abuse from peers, and I had used the word. Um, yeah, I think that's when I had maybe cut out or whatever. The word insidious. Okay, insidious means something that's very progressive, very covert. There were things at home that seemed like it was normal, but it found out that it really was not normal and healthy at all. Some things were blatant and out front, like I was born and raised in predominantly single parent family. And yes, there were some obvious issues. Uh, my mother was a good parent in a lot of ways, but she had certain issues where I have a sibling, a younger sister, where she wasn't affected a lot, but I was affected more. And I've heard that's typical, that you can have siblings where one sibling, stuff like that, they can flourish through whatever, and the other sibling where that's just not the drum for them to beat to, if I make sense.
Sure.
Okay.
Hmm.
So I was one of them. And then finding out years later that I was a natural born mystic, why certain environments and certain things didn't work for me, which I'll get into later. Because I didn't find those things out till after I was grown. But yeah, so I suffered a lot of, bullying, a lot of teasing, things like that. School, a lot of um, not a lack of opportunity to pursue sports the way I wanted to, like the other boys wanted to, and so a lot of my self development and stuff like that um, suffered a lot of overprotective. Mom was very overprotective, in which she had a good point to be,
Hmm.
because I did grow up in a somewhat of a gang violence type of thing, and then she had a lot of issues because she was married and divorced twice. I had 2, 3 stepdads. you know, I did have a lot of family support from grandparents. Um, God rest their soul. They were with me. I'm 50 years old now, and they were with me all my life till they passed away. I was 41 and 42 when they passed away, at 90 and 97. Um,
Wow.
yes, I had an aunt who's still living now, who I still call two aunts who I still call, and a cousin who I still call, who also I found out years later they went through some of the same issues in reference to, I'll say, covert narcissism with your parents. Okay. And so you put all those things together. Okay. I have it akin to, if you want to make a jail cell and you have one bar. So one bar is the bullying with peers, another bar is something at home, another bar is, your neighborhood, another bar is if you're, and I'm saying because of being a colored person, or African American person in certain things in society, that adds to it. So each little bit adds to it. So skipping ahead, one day maybe I could do another video on how I discovered certain things that I'm telling you that I thought was healthy was really narcissistic in disguise. And it wasn't until years later on my spiritual journey that I find out. But skipping along to get to what led me to um, more spiritually, mentally, and physically healthy lifestyle was, by the time I got about 24, I started having a mild anxiety problem. It wasn't like severe, like having panic attacks and things. And then, and I also want to say I was born and raised in Christianity. Um, First, Pentecostal from my grandparents, and then and parents and my mother, and then went to Baptist. And again, that was also another bar added to create the jail cell. Okay. And so finding out years later, there's a lot of, very subtle spiritual abuse in the religious world. Not saying that it's all over, not downplaying religion. And I still, I'm a hybrid person. I've grown to be a hybrid person where I believe in taking the best of both worlds in everything. And I don't believe that there's nothing absolutely good or bad. All right. So a lot of my original teachings about what's taught about God and, how to live a spiritual life, I still kind of adopt those things, but certain things that as I became more esoteric and more holistic, I did drop it away. And so around the time I was 24, when I started developing a little bit of anxiety issue, that was around the time I started to question the religion that I was brought up in. Because I was saying, with all this pain and suffering, and don't get me wrong, I had a lot of good times, a lot of happy moments and stuff like that, but we're talking about everything on a whole. Okay. So I knew that this was all a buildup of everything that was going on since childhood. Feel like I didn't know myself. I was in culinary arts at one time. I thought that's what I wanted to do when I got out of that. And I had got in education, in which that ended up being my part of my like career calling, but it was not my it wasn't my life purpose. You know how something can be your career calling, but it's not. You don't feel like it's your overall life purpose. If I make sense, right, right, right. Because I'm still in education to this day. Which is like 20 something years. But I struggled with low self-esteem. I also had not attention deficit, not hyper attention deficit, but I had attention deficit issues that went unaddressed while I was growing up. That seemed like I had a memory problem, very absent-minded. And what it was is I was one of those kids that had the report card sent home. Will is a good boy and everything like that. He's very respectful and good, very well in the class. but he daydreams too much. He doesn't pay attention, that kind of thing. I hated math. I hated the subject. My favorite subject was gym. Okay, so if that sounds similar to something you've heard of, I
Oh
was
yeah.
one of them kids. But yet, and my comprehension was kind of low. There it is again, another bar to add to the jail cell, because the traditional, I've learned that the traditional education system, to not knock it, but it's not good to have where one size fits all education system. And I'm in education,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying that I'm seeing where I feel like if I was in charge of the whole thing and stuff, I would have done things different. You can't have one size fits all for every child. It needs to be tailor made. You have a certain core, and then you have a tailor made thing. Because that's like taking a child and putting them in science when they really want to do art.
Right.
You know, they're not
Mm-hmm.
right, and being a little bit more where you're designed to. So what am I saying with that? I'm saying with that, with the attention, that was I learned part of my problem, why I struggled remembering things that I didn't like, because I didn't have enough engagement with what I did like. You know, mom would get upset with me, or, tell me 10 chores to do. I remember 5 of them and forget the other 5, 6, you know. And it seemed like you had a memory problem. No, you don't have a memory problem. But yet I could read, when I would read about, for example, a Dr. J autobiography, or not autobiography, a biography, or read about the Harlem Globetrotters, or read about my favorite music group, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, famous Philadelphia group, and other stuff. Oh, then or play video games back in the day when Pac-Man and Space Invaders came out. Oh, then I could go there for 2-3 hours. Okay, I got a perfect attention span now. Is it a memory problem now? Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So all those things put together, where by the time I was 24, you put all these dysfunctionals together, and then I started experiencing anxiety, feeling a fear of the future, low self-esteem, feeling like I don't know myself. I know, yeah, I came from this family line of this and that and the other, but you know what I mean. From a deep spiritual standpoint, I feel like I don't know where I'm going. I know that I want to lead a good, fulfilling life, but don't know how. And all the stuff that I came across over the years, I was not exposed to. I was not exposed to, like many of us. I'm not saying I'm the only one, but like many of us, I did not come across certain metaphysical teachings. You know what? We before we even talk about esoteric, certain things you don't even have to be esoteric. Just learning how to have balance in your life, how to live holistically, how to sleep right, how to eat right that's good for your own body and mind, how to breathe, et cetera, et cetera. Not being exposed to those things. And the church was not teaching those things, and was taught that it was of the devil, a lot of the stuff and everything like that. It was called, I don't know about the other churches, but, the Baptist and Pentecostal um, um, church line that I came from, it was called, the New Age Satanism.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff. And
Totally. They
right,
call it
so
the occult. The Catholic Church calls it the occult.
the
Uses that
occult,
word, and it's of Satan or the devil or whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
right, and even the word occult that you mentioned, uh, uh, that the word itself became demonized, because I found out that occult just means hidden.
Hidden.
Now, in terms of
Exactly.
what's hidden, that could be good or bad. So
Right.
that's taken out of context. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, you put all these things together, then by the time I was about 24 and a half, I was already had my foot in the door in the education, and was doing fairly well. Working with kids, I found out that I had a knack with working with children, everything. And I found out that some of that was that inner child spark that I had, as well as being growing into a fine educator to help children academically, anywhere from kindergarten to eighth, ninth grade. So I barely heard of the word yoga. Okay. And even then, like I said, based on that's why I explained my religious upbringing. Because when I first came across it, a part of my brain, you already know what my perception is a little bit. But across the street from my high school alma mater, there was a Afrocentric store that was what was it called? Asar Arset Society, which there are many of them in different cities and states and things like that. And I was looking for something. I knew that yoga has something to do with relaxation and things like that. But the part of me was saying, "Oh, this of the devil, this not the." And actually, before that, I was going to community college of Philadelphia at the time, working on some extra credits while working in education. And during this time, as I was trying to, how can I put it? Um, there was, I'm trying to think the best way to put it. While I was still in Christianity, and I found out later on this has nothing to do with Christianity in particular. Um, I found out later on that no matter what religion you are committed to, I noticed that it seems to be a pattern of you being forced into a dark night of the soul, lone wolf way of life. Anytime you know, when the herd, okay, the mass herd of people, when you stand out and say, I want to evolve, I'm looking for deeper spiritual answers for life. There is and I'll be blunt about there's a social prejudice,
Mhm.
okay, and discrimination that's there. And what I'm saying is, I was normal like anybody else as far I liked movies, I had some of the same worldly interests that I still do now,
Mhm.
that I like to hang out with. And I was getting this discrimination um, in and outside the church. In other words, you had peer groups that was really not trying to live a Christian life. So that made anybody that was trying to live a Christian life, supposedly, that made you the oddball. That made you an outcast. And it made you, uh, I was like alone in the church. And then when I go out to college and I meet people and I would fit in for a while and things like that. And then people would just drop away and drop off. Sometimes they would drop off just because I'll give an example. Like, for example, I've met some fellas or whatever. They like me and say, "Oh man, boy, Will's real cool and stuff. He liked to hang out. He liked to joke. He liked to go to movies, this and that and the other."
Uh-huh.
But as soon as they say, "Hey man, maybe we can go out, drinking and get drunk, want to do the corner board thing." I said, "No, man." I said, I'm not saying I don't drink, but I don't, get drunk or whatever. That's not my thing. Oh, well, ghost on you. Don't see you no more. You mean to tell me that I have all these interests? You just said that I was cool and this and that and the other, and completely ghost on me and decide not to be my friend no more just because I don't drink. And there's numerous examples I can give, but I'm just telling you one so you see my point. And
Sure.
that has happened numerous of times with people that I met inside the church and inside religions, rather, because I explored other religious territory too as time went on, and out in the world too. So that set the stage. Again, going back to when I was 2024, anxiety problem, loneliness, isolation, ostracized. Okay. And
Mhm.
so there's no way all that can happen and not take a blow to your
Yeah.
self-image.
So it triggered
Okay?
that. those feelings in you again, is what you're saying.
Well,
Right.
it wasn't really separate. It was all pretty much at once.
Okay.
Like I said,
Yeah.
growing up,
Gotcha.
and then early 20s, and because I started college, at 18, and I went back when I was in my early 20s. So it all happened in cities progressively.
Okay.
So then uh, I went to I had a lot of alone time going to the library, and I had an interest in psychology because of my issues. And as I was exploring the psychology issue, I came across these esoteric books that I thought was strange at first based on my Christian upbringing, but they were Taoist and Buddhist books. One of them was uh, by an author named Daniel Reed, um, called The Chinese Book of Health and Healing, and a couple books on Buddhism and Zen Buddhism. And Sharon, I can't tell you what. All I know is, even though I had my upbringing as it says, oh, this ain't Christian, don't look at it, I felt drawn to check them out. Something inside was drawing me to look at it. And I still looked at a few other psychology books. So I took it that, and not just that one day, but days and several weeks later, I continued to keep looking through them and I still felt like a few things in there were strange in reference to like Qigong and microcosmic orbit and things like that. But as I kept reading, I strangely kept being more and more attracted, more stronger affinity to it, to the point where I wanted to buy the book. And before I bought the book, getting back to the Afrocentric store, when I that was across the street in my neighborhood high school alma mater, right on Germantown Avenue, and I crossed the street and I went to the store. And even though it was Afrocentric, a lot of like Black spirituality stuff there, they did have a few books on white authors too. So as I'm exploring, I found this book called, and I still have it now, author named John Mason, if I remember the right name, and it was called A Guide to Stress Reduction. And before I bought the Chinese Book of Health and Healing, I actually bought that book from the Afrocentric store first. And when I before I bought it and I browsed through it, it had a smorgasbord of different stuff in reference to diet, in reference to relaxation exercises, in reference to meditation. It didn't come from and this was a Caucasian author and stuff like that. And he put a variety of stuff, like you put a buffet and you got a variety of stuff to choose from. Okay, choose what you like. And I started trying a few relaxation exercises to help the anxiety. I didn't, I wasn't drawn to the diet thing yet, but eventually later on I did. And as I start doing it, and at the time it was a stressful period with my um, preschool kindergarten teacher, as a preschool kindergarten teacher. It was some stress going on, not just with me personally, but just in the environment in general. And I think that's what, along with all what I just told you, I think that's what put the icing on the cake that start triggering the anxiety, mild anxiety problem. And I knew that um, there were other ways. Intuitively, I knew there were other ways besides popping pills
Yeah.
in order to do this. So this was in spring 1995, when I discovered all this, going to the library, discovering the books, doing the exercises. And I would say, I don't remember exactly, but somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks, I discovered that I felt calmer, felt more peaceful. I was still going to the library and checking out more Zen books and Buddhist books and stuff. And
So, Will, can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
yes.
So which of those tools did you start using that made you feel better from the books?
Well, it started out with the relaxation exercises.
Okay.
Yeah. There were several ones that I tried, but basically it just revolved around lying on a flat on a couch, similar to like if let's say you're going to do an out of body practice, so you're not meditating. I started meditating, but I didn't start meditating yet. I started out just laying on the bed or the couch, and the one that I chose is one where you can make a tape of yourself, um, a relaxation tape, hearing your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a primary one I used. And then as time went on, I remember coworkers and stuff saying, "Says, hey, why are you so calm?" Well, something like that. You know, people stressed out. And then as time went on, and I started studying the going through more of the same books, I started checking out their other recommendations. Like John Mason's book recommended, what's his name? Benson, his name is. He has a book called The Relaxation Response. Okay. That's a classic. You can Google that and you look that up. And Daniel Reed recommended in the Chinese Book of Health and Healing another book called The Tao of Health, Sex, and Longevity. Okay. So I bought those books, and those books to this day ended up being my basic bread and butter, which is why when I came to your out of body workshops and each of us would speak and everything, I don't know if you recall, that's why I brought up those books so much, because those books ended up being my savior. That ended up being my turning point. And I began to expand and get more and more into more practice. I start trying the breathing exercises, start trying Taoist meditation as the years rolled by. And then in early 1997, I was 26 and a half. This was the turning point when I started getting into the dietary parts that I didn't really look at as much. I just got to what worked for the anxiety and stuff. I was into music at that time. I was into music to a certain extent in the church world and out. And I sang on this interdenominational choir, and we had a concert, I remember, in South Philadelphia. And before that, I was feeling this unusual tiredness days before that, unexplainable. I didn't know why. So at that time, when we had that concert, I felt like I was having an anxiety thing again, except this time it was worse. And I stepped off everything. So long story short, the choir directress, she noticed that I wasn't there after the song was over. And, long story short, I ended up being rushed to the hospital, and it had nothing to do with anxiety. It was a blood sugar issue. I realized that some of the stuff I was reading in Daniel Reed's book, it wasn't bad, but I misread how to judge your own metabolism, how to eat. And I was trying to go full vegetarian, and which meant cutting your protein down and eating more carbs and things like that. Find out that it made me hypoglycemic, meaning low blood sugar at that time. And so I realized my mistakes at that time. I didn't have to stay overnight. I came home, but the doctor sent me home that day and everything, and I got follow-ups, and then I found out through my regular primary doctor that it was low blood sugar. And so then I started to revamp everything that I was doing with the diet and start correcting that. And then when I started adding that to everything I was doing, that was like a recipe. Okay, I got the flour, now I got the eggs, now I got the sugar, that type of thing.
Right.
And so skipping along a few more years later, because I found out every so often through the years, I came to find another, I meant to say like a puzzle piece, because one of my, if I ever do any poetry, I'm going to say one of the things about life that, life to me is like a puzzle to be put together. And every several months, every year, every few years, I kept finding another piece of the puzzle to put together. And then I became to realize that the sum is greater than its parts. That the secret to getting to God, or getting to whatever you call source, is going on the journey and finding different pieces of the puzzle that have been scattered abroad.
Yeah.
And all these puzzle pieces, at least to me, in my spirit, in this part of my life, I feel like the divine has told me that his body has been cut to pieces and spread apart all over the earth, similar to the mythology in Egyptian spirituality about Asar. Asar's body was cut up into pieces and everything. So it's up to us to go along the journey and journey, not literally journey through the earth, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
find uh, what works, what's beneficial, and add it to what you already have, and build on it, and constantly build. And I'm still constantly building on it, because I'm still finding more pieces of the puzzle, and finding out that putting together uh, uh, what the diet, putting together, instead of just doing one thing. Most people just do one or two things. They may exercise, but they may not pay attention to diet. They may pay attention to diet, but they may not. And each section has a certain limitation. And what happens is situations come along that present itself where you run into a brick wall, you know. Um, um, like for example, the anxiety that I felt when I was rushed to the hospital. Um, Even though the relaxation, the meditation, all the kind of things work to reduce the anxiety, if something else is aggravating a certain aspect of your body, mind, and spirit, then that will make those practices ineffective until, in this situation, until the diet is corrected. Okay. But and at the same time, if the diet is not corrected, the diet can be corrected, but if you're stressed out and don't have the proper thinking on life, okay, the proper response to life situations, if you get stressed out and have your cortisol and blood sugar spiking because of stress, then that can uh, cut away at what you're doing with your diet, no matter how healthy you eat. Okay. And so I started putting together, all the energy exercises, all the meditation, the diet, and then I still, and people that are diet conscious and listeners may not agree with this, but I feel like, and you don't have to do this, but I do this. Sometimes I still resort to junk food every now and then. I still treat myself to my favorite sweets or whatever like that periodically. Um, and I found that you get to a certain point where even in your diet or something, when you go to the extreme of something, even if it's beneficial, it can harm you. even though it was good for you, everything. Um, Such
What would
as,
you, excuse me,
yeah.
go
Mm.
ahead. I was just going
Oh,
to ask you, what would you consider extreme? You were about to explain that.
yes. For example, using myself as an example,
Mhm.
um, when would eat healthy over the years and everything, I was very active. I got, in the weight training, and I've always been slim, fast metabolism.
Mhm.
And there's a certain amount of weight loss that comes about naturally um, when you're eating certain natural foods or whatever, and that's just the nature of certain health foods and certain foods that are kind of like in the middle, such as beans, certain pastas, potatoes. Um, they're high caloric, high carbohydrate, but they have some nutritional content. And so when you're already a slender person, okay, when you're a heavier person, Nathan, you can go longer in having, low carb and whatever type of low carb healthy diet or whatever that you're doing that's
Mhm.
generate, even if you're not trying to lose weight and you lose weight as a natural effect of what you're doing. When you're heavier, you can do that. When you are thin, you have to watch it because you can start having um, arrhythmias if you're underweight and
Mhm.
if you're exercising and working out and jogging
Mhm.
and I was doing my qigong and meditation and all that stuff, then you'll just keep losing and losing and losing. And so sometimes, and then I found out that through Daniel Reed's book and other literature that I came across over the years, that it's actually a good thing for some people to go back to the standard, what you call the standard American diet. I'm not for it like that now, but it actually can be a good thing, just enough to maintain weight and cycle back and forth.
Well, what is
Now,
his idea of the
yeah,
standard American diet? Meat and potatoes kind of thing?
well, the standard American diet meaning that the processed foods and stuff
Oh,
like that,
yeah, yeah.
processed carbohydrate starches, which would include junk food, but also canned foods that's high in carbs,
Okay.
fast food, that kind of thing. Um,
Yikes.
yeah, and everything. And like I said, I still eat that way every so often, even since I be, be, became ketogenic, like I told you, whatever, which is intuitively, which is, by the way, even though I overcame the hypoglycemia and was doing fine with that. When I got to um, this was spring 2018.
Mhm.
Okay, I was already living out here, uh, looking great, thin physique, muscles,
Mhm.
all that.
Right.
And uh, went to the doctor just to say, okay, since I moved here to Oregon, I have not had uh, a primary doctor checkup just to have myself on record with something. I didn't really have any complaints or whatever. I just had a slight concern about a slight numbness in my toe or whatever, in which eventually ended up being nothing. It went away. But I mentioned that to the doctor, says, feel my feet and everything. I says, okay, I see. Okay, you're fine. I said, it's not all over the foot, because if it was, that would mean diabetes. So you're certainly not a diabetic or nothing like that. But let me take what you call a hemoglobin A1C test. And I asked her what that is. And I said, that's something that measures your blood sugar over a 3-month period.
Mm.
And I said, okay. I said, and I said, well, I did have some apple juice before I came here. I said, no, it won't. This is not the same as taking a fasting glucose. And I said, you'll be fine. So when I took it and it came back, says that I was 2 points over normal, meaning you're pre-diabetic. It's like, what?
Yikes.
So I basically, throughout the last 2 years of this journey, with starting from then up to now, it ended up being a blessing in disguise
Mhm.
because um, I never heard of the hemoglobin A1C, and it's something that I'm glad to put out there in your video. This is my first video ever doing. So anybody hears it, you, if you have insurance, you need to check if your insurance will cover getting them done, because you don't have to have any symptoms and be pre-diabetic or the early stages of diabetic. There's a lot of people walking around here, and there's also a myth. A lot of coworkers and all that stuff. When I told them, they were shocked just as much as me. Said, pre-diabetic, what are you doing? As thin and athletic as you are, what are you doing pre-diabetic? Find out you can have a fatty liver. We can both be in the same room, and we can have 2, 3 other people be heavy or whatever, heavy set, and I be the thinnest person and have the fattiest liver, and the other heavy people be normal, have a normal healthy liver, and they're just big because that's just their genetic makeup. Okay, these are the things that the universe was showing me, saying, hey, I know you're shocked, but there's something that I want you to change. It was fine, the way you were eating before, but now this is about listening to the universe saying, this is a new chapter where I need you to change the way you were eating before, and it'll be in a way where you'll still be able to eat some of the foods that you still like, but there's going to be some changes there. And if you don't make those changes, then you're going to be just like everyone else. The hemoglobin A1C continues to spike up and spike up and spike up. And then you're going to end up diabetic and be just like everybody else in the family that has this belief. I've tried to tell people in the family that I've discovered that diabetes is not diabetes 2. Okay. Type 2 diabetes is not a hereditary disease. It is a result of eating too many carbs and sugars and not incorporating fasting. And as you know, I know you know about fasting, Sharon, that and this was something that was in our cultures, where indigenous white culture, black cultures, and Native American, et cetera, et cetera. Fasting, and they've done studies on people that have done it. They had lesser incidences of diabetes and obesity and all that stuff. And when I say obesity, we're not talking about the size, about what you look like. We're talking about having this unhealthy visceral fat around your organs and everything, which is why you can be thin and be very heavily fatty on the inside. And that's a dangerous fat. I found out as I was studying a few people's names I'll mention on YouTube description, a few doctors,
Okay.
but how they talk about
So
how
let
dangerous.
me
Uh-huh. Go
let
ahead.
me ask you real quick.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, how I understand you. I just want to make sure it's clear for everyone how I
Mm-hmm.
understand it. That if you're eating carbs, like potatoes and beans and that kind of thing, a lot of that,
Mm-hmm.
like you were doing, right? And you don't give your body a chance, the time to process it, then the fat is stored up around your liver and organs. Is that what you're saying?
Eventually, and it's not just the carbs,
Eventually.
it's the protein. I found out you can eat too much protein. If you eat more protein than what
Okay.
your body needs, that also converts into fat too. And
Okay.
what it is when we eat, we have a certain storage capacity. Each person has a certain storage capacity in your liver and in your cells. And when we'll start with our growth periods of life, when we're children and we're teenagers and we're growing. And unless you were born with type 1 diabetes, which type 1 diabetes I found out is an exception to the rule. That is a great deal of the time hereditary. Okay. But when we're growing, that's a pathway in the body called mTOR, because things are growing. This is why we get hungry. We need to eat a lot. The body is growing and growing, and the liver and the cells and everything expands its capacity and everything. But when you get to a certain point where you stop growing, this is why you may not have um, um, like hunger pangs like you did as a growing girl or a growing boy, because the body doesn't need as much. Only if you're more active and you're burning it off. Okay. And what happens is that when you burn, when you store, you and people end up storing more than they burn, because they continue to keep eat and snacking all the time. And the it's not in the culture to fast. And we're not talking about just, oh, you finish a meal 9 o'clock and then you wake up 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning and drink coffee and donuts. That ain't no real fasting.
Right.
Even if you do a 12-hour water fast, that's child's play. Okay. And I learned about intermittent fasting is kind of like becoming more popular in the naturopathic world, but it's not nothing new. This was something that our indigenous cultures did, and science is beginning to catch up with what's going on physiologically in the body, why it works. So getting back to when you're finished growing, there's two things that take place: eating too much of the foods that spike what's called insulin. Okay. Insulin is a storage hormone. If you have a refrigerator, okay, and let's say, a matter of fact, let's just say your house is your liver. And let's say I'm insulin, okay? I come along with my U-Haul truck with some stuff in the U-Haul truck, the stuff that comes from food now. And I say, hey, Sharon, I knock on the door. You let me in, say, hey, Will, how you doing? Hey, I got some stuff to deliver to you. And you take it, right? And let's say that repeatedly goes on and on and on. And you continue to take more and more until one day you see that, man, I got too much stuff in here. It's packed.
Yeah.
And then the next time I come to you and knock on the door and be like, no, Will, I don't want to take no more stuff and everything. I'm packed, go back another time. And you shut the door. And then I knock on the door again and you be like, Will, I got enough stuff. Can you leave me alone? I gotta do something with all this stuff here. Please go away. That is a metaphor for the cells resisting the sugar. It's saying, hey, I don't want to take too much sugar. The liver is saying, I got enough. It's packed. Okay. And then what happens is you find out they're diabetic. They go to the doctors. And what does the doctor do? Instead of putting them on healthy fasting regimes, and we're not talking about nothing heavy. We're talking about fasting enough where you combine it with taking away the high insulin spiking foods and reducing your meals. Because like I said, it's very popular for people to be eating and snacking all day. If you're eating and snacking all day, guess what? The pancreas is be like, oh, we got to shoot out more insulin. When you don't eat, the pancreas says, okay, everything's cool now. We don't got to kick out no insulin. Okay. But if you keep eating and snacking all the time and be like, okay, shoot more insulin there. And then the cells be like, I'm packed. And they say, but I'm telling you, Sharon, I need somewhere to put it. And then when you keep closing the door, what happens is I take all the stuff and I start storing it around your house. I might make your house start looking like trash. That is a metaphor for the bloodstream. Outside your house is a metaphor for the bloodstream. Too much, it starts to backlog in the bloodstream. Then when you get check your blood sugar and the blood sugar monitor starts sticking yourself and seeing you getting these high blood sugar scores, that's what happens. And what happens is you go to the doctor, just like Dr. Jason Fung.
Whoops.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go in my we can still talk, but I just need to put it turned out my battery was running low quicker than
Okay. Okay,
Can you
sure.
still hear me? So you have Jason, Dr. Jason Fung. He used a different analogy, but it's still similar. And says when you go to the doctor, and the first thing they do is they put you on a medication, and then they tell you still eat carbohydrates the way you want to. I heard the American Diabetic Association said, they don't. Sometimes they advocate low carb, sometimes they don't. But the main thing is they give you insulin medication to force the cells to open up and cram pack more sugar into the cells. And that does work for a while. He said there's a honeymoon period that goes on. And he said this is what happens with the typical patient. So let's say there's a honeymoon period that goes on for like 4 or 6 months, a year, or whatever, and the sugars really do go down to normal, and they still may be eating the same way they eat. And then after a while, they notice that they're gaining more weight. They go back to the doctor and be like, "Hey doc, my blood sugars is great and everything like that, but I'm noticing that I'm gaining more weight and everything." And the reason why it's Dr. Jason Fung is saying that, and you could check out any of his videos and stuff like that. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth or whatever.
Right.
And he said the reason why it's fallacy to give insulin is because more insulin causes weight gain. And when too much insulin stays in the body for too long, that causes high blood pressure, and a lot of the same stuff that high blood sugars, which means that you could be checking your sugar and it could be normal. And the insulinemia can be still causing a lot of damage to your blood, the same damage that diabetes and all that stuff can cause,
Mm-hmm.
with or without, whether you have symptoms of it or not. And it just does so much. It causes hormone disruptions. It causes so much stuff. So anyway, what happens then is the doctors continue to up the dosage. Okay. And some people get lucky and are able to go for years, for the rest of their life, and be able to tolerate more and more insulin. And some people, they get to a point where their body breaks down from it. And this is where you hear about eventually the diabetes getting worse. And I'm sure that if you've known anybody that had it, you
Like
may
where
have heard.
people lose digits like toes and feet
Uh,
and things like that.
yes,
Yeah.
that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
That's
I've
that
known people like that.
right, and that happens one of two things: either they're not taking their medication, or two, they're taking it faithfully and trying to even if they're trying to eat a low carb and stuff, but they're still taking the insulin. And if they get more and more dependent on it, they got to a point where their body, no matter how faithful they're doing it, their body started not tolerating it more now, because the body is screaming, wants to
Right.
go back to nature. And the cells are screaming and saying, I want to get rid of this stuff. And also, Jason Funk talked about another thing. When there's another reason why it can get worse with some people. The sugar has to go somewhere. When insulin gets the sugar down, when the insulin gets the sugar down, okay, it doesn't just disappear. There's only uh, three ways to get sugar down. The first one is, we'll start with the people that's taking insulin. It shoves it it takes it out of the blood. So when you prick yourself, they're like, oh, goody, goody, my sugars is normal.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts to dump it in other organs. Okay. So then, like I said, it's like taking out the trash and stuff like that. Just like I told you, come into your house. Okay, Sharon won't let me in no more. I don't care if it is packed. I'm gonna start, packing everything around her house.
Around,
It's gonna start looking like a junkyard, and I'm gonna just keep bringing it. And that's what the body does. And then so if the police comes along and says, hey, you got to take up all this stuff around Sharon's house, it may make me do it and I'll pick it up, but I got to dump it somewhere else. So the body starts to dump it in the kidneys, start dumping it in the lungs, start dumping it in the brain. I've heard, like, if too much sugar gets dumped in the kidneys, that can lead to kidney disease. If it dumps too much in the brain, I've heard of I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's something about stage 3 diabetes. They're calling certain types of Alzheimer's and dementia of stage 3 because of too much sugar, getting to the brain.
Wow.
Going to the eyes to make you blind. We can go on and on.
Yeah.
So that's the other one. The other 2 ways is exercise and fast. Now you can have diabetics that take insulin and everything, and they're exercising, but exercising alone, if you're taking insulin and not, and doing a little bit of fasting that kind of goes with it, what happens is, and if somebody that's already a diabetic and you're on insulin, then before you go on any fasting, you need to check with your doctor first. So I want to say that as a disclaimer to anybody watching. That's number one.
Thank you. And we'll have a disclaimer in the description too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But thank you for saying that, for sure. Yeah.
Right. And so, but somebody that's starting off before they get to that point, like me, like myself, and learn these things beforehand, you can stop it and show improvement with those things beforehand. But the other 2, because sometimes you can exercise and the exercise doesn't burn off. You're still storing more sugar, more than what you're burning. But if you, like in my testimony, and not saying that the keto diet is for everybody. Okay, there's certain exceptions to the rule where keto diet is not for everybody. And even when it is, there's a certain point where I need to cut it off and give it a rest, go back to the way I was eating and cycle back and forth, which I'll talk about later. But fasting and exercise, and when I was doing the ketogenic diet, which consists of healthy, high fat diet with moderate protein and low carb and everything. And what happened, what that does is, it for me, it took about 2-3 weeks to notice it working. But I combined it with intermittent fasting and eat like maybe 2 or 3 meals a day. And what it does is the body sees the fat coming, and fat is something that spikes insulin the least. Okay. Sugars and carbs spike insulin the most. Protein spikes it moderate. Fats spikes it the least, which means that when it gets in your system and it stores it and it doesn't see any sugar to be stored, it has no choice but to utilize all the excess sugar that you're using up. So this is where exercise is most beneficial when you're in a
So
yeah, go ahead.
okay, so that's when you're in ketosis, right?
Right, the ketosis.
Okay, so help me understand, or help us understand, what would be a good high fat diet? What explain to me, or share with us a day of 2 or 3 meals, what you would eat on that type of regimen, and also how many days you would fast, that kind of thing.
Okay, what I did was I, let's say on the night before I started, because I was never really hungry in the morning anyway. So say whatever my last meal was, whether it was keto or not, and then I started that morning. But if somebody that does eat in the morning, I let's say I'll give two different types because some people don't like animal protein or
Mhm.
against it. So the animal protein way, let's say if I had some bacon, or let's say some eggs, or eggs and bacon, and green leafy vegetables such as spinach,
Mhm.
arugula,
Mhm.
kale, with pickles, tomatoes, whatever vegetables you want to put in it. And you can use a little bit of the dressing or whatever like that. I would stay away from anything with like artificial sweetener type of dressing. So you have that just enough to flavor it, and that would consist of a low carb diet right there.
So
A
that
low
would be
carb,
your
yeah.
breakfast. So let me ask you
Yeah.
this question real
Right.
quick.
Mhm,
So I have a smoothie every morning, okay?
mhm,
And I put greens in it. I put protein powder and maybe some berries
mhm,
and some flaxseed and a little bit of nuts. So and almond milk and
mhm.
unsweetened almond milk. But I put it, but it's liquid and it's not a salad or it's not food because like you said, I don't really like to eat breakfast, so I drink that for most of my day. Would that be something that would spike my sugar, or would that be? Oh, and I also put avocado, like a tablespoon of avocado in there.
Right. Yeah. And avocado, that was one of the ones we were going to mention in terms of a more
Okay.
plant-based version of what I
Yeah.
was going to say. But well, see, it's not a matter of what will it spike your sugar, because everything you eat, every time you eat, your sugar and insulin spike. It's just the degree of what, or whether
Gotcha.
you high one or a low one. Now,
I
based on
guess
what
my question was, does it matter if it's in liquid form or does it matter if it's in bulk food, raw food or well, raw, it's all raw anyway, not, except for the powder, but that's still raw, I think. I get the raw one. Does that make any sense? Am I making any sense?
yeah, it does. No,
In your opinion, does it matter?
no, to up to my knowledge, up to this point, I don't think it matters, except for you want to at some point get some fiber in throughout your day that you eat in reference to have a healthy microbiome, but that's a whole nother issue
Right. That's
altogether.
another,
Right, right,
another video.
right. But in reference to uh, the sugar and insulin spiking, it goes and stuff. No, it doesn't matter whether it's liquor, because you can drink. Because I was going to say coconut oil, um, extra virgin coconut oil is a very healthy fat. Very healthy
Hmm.
MCTs. People can look that up and everything like that. Um, that's also part of. You don't even have to be on ketogenic diet, but that's something that gives you a good deal of fat, and you can add that to your smoothies, add that to your protein drink. What all you said? You said you had the greens, you had protein powder. The protein powder, what kind is it?
It's called a vegan for life or vegan for life, nature for life or something. It has tons of raw stuff in it and probiotics and a lot of
Okay.
things. Yeah.
Well,
Because
it just depends.
I'm
Mhm.
basically vegan.
Okay. Well, it depends on if when you look on the label, if if it says it has like other sweeteners or whatever like that. I'm not saying not to drink it, but for somebody that finds out that they're insulin resistant, you, you have to really tighten up with certain things in reference to there's a lot of hidden sweeteners and certain things where a
Yeah.
healthy metabolic person can be fine with that. And you can be fine with that too. When I say you, talking about an insulin resistant person.
Sure.
But once you start getting better
Hmm.
and start seeing signs of healthy metabolism, then you can start kind of cheating, have your cheat days, because it's good to have cheat days where you can add a little bit more sweet, more carbs in your sugar in your diet and stuff more often. But
Yeah.
basically what you just explained is not too bad. And the avocados is good. That's also a healthy fat
Yeah, I
too.
love avocado. I eat a lot, but I do look at the sweeteners in products, and I only we'll eat something with stevia or monk fruit.
Yeah, that's something I'm just starting to explore more. The what's called the healthy sweeteners. I've heard good things about monk fruit, meaning that do you experience it being sweet?
I do. I like it. Yeah.
Okay, because I heard that that's something that that's not like artificial sweeteners or regular sugars where it doesn't spike insulin and you'll still get a
Right.
nice sweet.
Yeah.
So that's something
Yeah, I
new
heard
that
that with
I'm going to
stevia too.
research. Oh, stevia too? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And xylitol, that's another one I heard of. Have you heard of that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So those are fairly new to me that I'm always exploring and researching and experimenting to create a new quote unquote a new hack or biohack, if I'm saying the right word,
Yeah.
the hack
I
into
love
my
that.
system. Right. And so
So it
yeah.
we're getting running a little late on time, but so if you could let us know, and we'll talk again for sure.
Mhm.
Um, how long would you fast? How long, what would be some good way for recovery from fasting, and explain that schedule for you, what you use, in your opinion.
Well, what I because I did my body was used to not eating breakfast in the morning. I was able to start off a little longer, but for a beginner, it would have to be. Um,
Oops, lost your video again.
can you still see or hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that was a phone call. I just declined it. Whatever. Um,
Okay.
um, let's say whatever your routine is, then even if you're somebody to snack or to start off little by try to skip a snack or skip one meal or whatever, do two meals and just go maybe 2 3 hours longer before you eat the next meal and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and then gradually work your way up to extending the time. So let's say if you finish your last meal, let's say 8 o'clock. Okay, let's say you finish your last meal, let's say 6 o'clock. Try to go 2 more hours before you eat the last meal. Do that for a little while, and then when you get to where you're used to that, try to eat healthy the first 1 or 2 meals, and then try to practice skipping that meal. The whole idea is to work your way up to a full 12 hours fasting, then gradually get to 16 and 8. And then in the meantime, this was a mistake that I made. When you're fasting, you can drink regular water, but every now and then drink water with some uh, um, Himalayan salt,
Mm-hmm.
some healthy sea salt or something of some kind, and magnesium.
Healthy
I
sea
did a
salt.
mag yeah,
Okay.
because you can lose when you work your way up to bigger rounds of fasting,
Mm-hmm.
you can lose minerals,
Right.
and that can cause problems or whatever. But other than that, I when I started feeling it, the first couple times I felt it was on a weekend. I went and worked out. I was in ketosis and did a full workout, and I had my last meal like 8 9 10 o'clock the night before, and worked out like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and went home. I already put in 18 hours of fasting, did a workout, checked my blood sugar, it was like 80 85, and this was after 18 hours of fasting. This is when the ketogenic intermittent fasting thing was really working, and I was feeling energetic, and I was like, oh wow, man, I feel like I ate 3 meals. I said, this stuff really does work.
That's the
And
one thing I noticed the most. Sorry to interrupt, Will, but that's the one thing
mhm,
I noticed the most with fasting, because
mhm.
we've talked about this, and I started fasting 20 years ago, but I was on big fasts at the time. Now I just do little fasts. But is how much energy I had, and how I felt so much better. And if I was going to do a workout, I had more strength than if
Uh,
I had
uh,
eaten before that.
yeah, Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
laughing because I know what you're talking
Mhm.
about.
I
Because you
know.
would think that more food and
Yeah.
everything like, but you probably experienced soon as you started eating, you probably start feeling a slump then. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Sluggish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do I feel so sluggish? Yeah, totally.
hmm
Yeah.
So those are signs that another thing, which is when you get into the gymnastics of fasting levels, like I said, not for beginners, called autophagy. That autophagy is taking place. The mitochondria of the cells, and the immunity is getting stronger. It by all the energy that you're feeling, and that these ketones that they talk about is really real, because that's the sign they say that your ketones is really revved up in your cells, and that shows that there's proof that the experience, not just getting on here, preaching theory. A couple times I just told you about, I up to this day I've experienced it a number of times. I've gone to work and I've worked the whole day, uh, working my way up to that where my body was used to it, feeling energetic, like you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's signs that the science behind what they're saying really is working. And I want to leave two last things that of discoveries that I found out too, that coffee, black coffee without the cream and sugar, taken
Hmm.
while you're fasting, does not break a fast, and also increases the effects of the fasting, and does not spike insulin when it's plain black coffee or medicinal
Interesting.
mushrooms that you can put in it. And green tea also is the same thing. I came to discover.
Okay.
hmm
Okay. I've heard a lot of good things about green tea, and I personally I can't stand the taste of coffee. So if I drink coffee, it's with which is hardly ever anymore, but it's the foo-foo coffee.
hmm
So yeah, that I've heard good things about green tea for sure.
do you like green tea?
That's interesting. I have to. Mm, I like sweet, so I'd
Right,
have to put sweetener in it. Yeah,
right.
stevia or something. Yeah,
What I did
but
is, and
yeah,
this,
I'll drink it.
right. What I did is I did similar to what people do with drinking. Most people that I've known all my life that started off drinking beer and stuff like that, they said they had to get accustomed to the taste and everything. So
Yeah,
I started doing the same thing with the taste, as far as drinking black coffee, or tea by itself and everything.
yeah.
But what it does is that helps, uh, um, you know, um, what I'm trying to say. All your storage that helps increase your fat burning switch as well.
Sure.
Why it works hand in hand with the other, what you call them. So
So does it
so yeah.
increase your metabolism? Is that what's going on,
Yeah, because
basically?
what happens is whether you look it or not, your metabolism slows down when we're growing. Our metabolism, even if we're a little heavier on the heavier side when we're in our
Hmm.
childhood,
Hmm.
in teenage years, we're in the growing state, so the metabolism is higher, and that's why see people have the belly around there, and they easily gain weight. And even myself, when I go back to standard American diet, when I'm taking a break from keto, I
Hmm.
find I'll put on 5 pounds by the end of the week, and yet years ago I couldn't put on 5 pounds in a month to save my life. Not
Yeah.
saying it was bad, but my metabolism was higher. My insulin
Right.
sensitivity was healthier. So, just getting back to certain things of um, what nature intended for us to do, finding out, and I want to say a few names, people to look up themselves. Dr. Jason Fung,
Hmm.
um, uh,
Fong.
who's that?
Fong, is that his last name spelled Fong?
Yes, Fung.
Fung. Okay.
Yeah, and also Ben Azali. I may not be saying his name right, but he's the latest one. He has a subscription. his YouTube subscription is called Keto Camp. Okay. And he wrote a book called Keto Flex that was just released. He's the newest cat that I'm keeping up with, how to cycle in and out of cycle diet. I need to say this one important for women. For women, I very highly recommend Dr. Mindy Pelz, Pelz. Okay, I had my list. I was trying to find my list before I got on. I couldn't find it because she
send it
talked.
to me.
Okay.
I can put it in the description.
Right. Dr. Mindy Pelz, I highly recommend. She talks about keto for everybody, but she talks a lot about the ketogenic way for women because it's slightly different for women with y'all having monthly cycles and different things where if a woman is overweight with the thyroid, it's some slight variations, and she really gets into it a little bit more for the women more than the men doctors and stuff.
Right, with hormones, different types of hormones.
Yes. Some things is the same for everybody all around, because I also experienced that too. I experienced more testosterone balance without Chinese herbs and things like that I was taking that really would work to balance your testosterone. But I came to find that you develop a tolerance for it. Okay, so when you develop a tolerance for it, the universe brought so many answers to me through that experience of finding out I was pre-diabetic that answered a lot of things. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, I know that there's a lot more we can cover, and I also want to talk about your mystic journey too. So
the what journey?
Your mystic journey.
Oh yeah.
And we can cover that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying another time I wanted to do a separate one about I'll say starting off with my meditation experiences and dreaming and out of body practice and that kind of stuff.
Okay, you cut out a little bit there. So you wanted to start talking about lucid dreaming and out of body? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like the early practices of my early experiences of meditation, and when I first started practicing lucid dreaming and out of body experiences as a separate video. Yeah.
Oh, I would love to talk about that. Yeah, you know me, I'm always up for talking to people about that.
Right.
That kind of
But
thing.
can I say just one last thing as a central theme? Even though, like I said, we talked about a lot of my general life story, how I got involved in this and went into the diet thing up to now. But and this will be, I'll say, the central theme to whatever video I do, whether on your video or whether I start my own channel or what. And that is always what I say to the audience: always try to, even if you know knowledgeable about a particular subject, continue to do research and expand your knowledge on that particular subject, because you never know when there's updates or when something you were doing 10, 20 years ago might be outdated, and continue to explore other aspects of well-being. So because the more knowledge and the more skills you have on the belt, the more you put it together, the sum is always more powerful than the parts. And the more sum you have, SUM, the more of a powerful person and more powerful conscious creator to meet what life challenges you have to offer, that you have to face.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste. And I always enjoy talking with you, Will. It's
likewise.
good to see you. Yeah.
Likewise.
Okay.
and looking forward to next time, and enjoy your rest of the week.
You too. We'll set something up. And thanks everyone for watching, checking out now.
All right. Take care.